All right, so this week we are talking about blood spatter and shooting scenes. Now you'll find that a good chunk of these scenes are both handled the same way through a process called road mapping. Now, road mapping for blood spatter is kind of different than for bullet trajectory, but they have a lot of very similar similarities. And also you'll find that most of the photography here isn't so much a specialty of photography. It's just keeping consistent with your overall mid-range close-up with scale, and then even getting into some of your close-up with scales into that macro mode or into that really tight, magnified view versus, just general views. Also keep in mind that when we get into bullets, not only will we have the bullet holes themselves and injuries on people, but we might even have the recreation. I guess we have the blood spatter recreation with stringing of scenes, but we might have to add in another layer of recreation with our bullet paths, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, so what is road mapping? Well, road mapping is something you'll learn a lot more about in the biological and trace evidence class, but road mapping is a system that we have for causing blood spatter like this to have some form of identifying explanation. So we start off with taking and we lay these scales on the wall, and these are paper scales. I have one here with me. So that's just a piece of paper, and we literally tape this to the wall or use poster putty to stick it to the wall, and we just keep laying out sections. So here's numbers through 30, and here we go up to 81. And so we just literally stick these on the wall, going floor to ceiling, and then across the ceiling, across the floor, and we create basically a grid for ourselves where we can label out where identifying pieces of blood spatter or identifying objects that we want to collect. So if we swabbed, blood from here to see whose blood this is, the DNA, you can see we have our grid on the walls here. And we've got evidence markers, and so this little F might be denoting the fact that right about here is where we actually had swabbed out a blood droplet. Identifying individual droplets with numbers and scales. So again, the idea here is to get in tight and get in close, so a lot of your photography is going to be at that macro level. Now, we have a couple different ways of doing identification. So here we actually have the ID photo marker book, and you can see inside is letters and numbers and then arrows. And if you look closely at our letters, hope you can see that. You can see that we actually have scales right built in with these letters. Here's another example where this particular manufacturer is just a little flip chart book, and inside is just plain old numbers, letters. We do have arrows to denote north, and then in this particular book we have just lots of different arrows. That's all this book is arrows. So the idea here, though, folks, is that what I want to do is put this blood into context, and I want to be able to note and label out which droplets of blood I'm measuring if we're going to be doing that stringing of the scene and reconstruction. I want to note which droplets of blood we actually grabbed and swabbed. Some of your kits will actually even have arrows that have the word swab right on it, so you can denote that you swabbed that droplet of blood. And this way we know exactly what's going on. Now, it's a big important thing to have arrows on these things to denote which way is up. So when you're taking a photo and you're looking at that photo, you're not going, oh, which way does this, is this handprint? If I have a close-up of this handprint here, and you get, later on there's that question, was the hand on the wall this way or this way? So when I take a photo of the hand, I'm going to include one of my arrow stickers showing up, so showing that that handprint was going up. Which then, that gets into our whole area here of, doing our analysis. And that is getting in there, getting in tight, and it doesn't really matter if you're using the sticker books like we have, or whether you're using just post-it notes with stuff written on it. You still want scales that are reliable scales, but post-it notes work also. But we're getting in and we're getting some close-up photography. Make sure you get good photography and good photographic coverage before you add any scales to the wall. Remember, it's overall, mid-range, close-up with scale. So we'll go back and re-photograph our overalls and our mid-ranges after we hang those scales, and then obviously we do the close-up with scale idea. So we want to get these photos done like this, where there's nothing there. Then we hang all these objects up and start taking another set of photos, and then we get in close and start getting some more detailed photos with those scales. Already kind of mentioned we've got the tools. We've got lots of different markers out there. We're just looking for numbers, labels, something to identify which droplet of blood is which one, which swab goes to which stain pattern there on the wall. Doing the road mapping is very similar to gunshots, so we can do shooting reconstruction, where again we've got our labels and we've got our scales to show which bullet we are measuring, or which hole we are measuring, first, second, third, fourth, and then we put our trajectory rods through, and then we take photos of our rods and the angles that they're coming out in. Usually, again, coming in close, we like to have little arrows to denote which way is up, so when I get into that tight close-up look, I can see, okay, that is up, so that the photo goes this way, not this way. So here we've got a couple of bullet holes in the wall, and the idea with these trajectory rods is now we can track back in which direction the bullet came from, because eyeballing it looks like they all came from over here, but what if one came from slightly over here more? So we've got a shooter moving. The other idea too is when we track these back, we can track them back so that those lasers crisscross, and then we can kind of say our shooter was likely in this area of the room, or our shooter started off here and moved to here, whatever the reconstruction of the shooting is. So you can see these two trajectory rods actually have lasers attached to the end. There's a couple different systems out there. In the old days, we used to hook a string on these and string the shooting scenes just like we strung our blood spatter. But the idea here is, with lasers, we can get that beam coming off, and again, understanding low light photography, understanding how to create contrast. So oftentimes we might need to add a little fog to the air, but not too much so that the photographs get too dense. But this is going to be a long shutter speed picture. You're going to have this up on the tripod, and you're going to take a long photo. We might even go back in with computer drawing programs and add in a person standing here to show the height of our shooter. We've done reconstructions too, where in some jurisdictions it's okay to have somebody who is a similar size as your shooter standing there holding a gun to show that, look, this is where the gun person was likely standing, and then bang bang. A couple different variations out there. Mannequins can be used. It's just a matter of what your local jurisdictions, what your local courts are accepting of. Here in Wisconsin, for the most part, we just kind of do this, and we might add in a virtual person later on or something, but that's pretty rare even for animations and stuff. Alrighty, so that's the basic concept here. It's the fundamentals: the overall mid-range close-up, close-up with scale, the close-up with scales. We're getting into macro photography because we've got small droplets of blood, we've got small bullet holes, but really our idea here is now we're starting some specialized skills of identifying unique characteristics so that we can reconstruct that crime scene. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will be talking to you next week.